Hi, I'm Monty Stauffer. I'm the industrial designer for the Kohler WasteLAB. We take landfill-bound waste from our production facility in Kohler, Wisconsin. We make tiles out of all the waste from our production facilities. We use crushed up sinks and toilets to make the tile body. We use dust and sand from our enamel processes and foundry processes for the glaze. Basically anything that is landfill bound, we try to put into our tile to make product. It's all beautiful. You can see the designs here. It's all available at Anstex, so come and check it out. Hi, everybody. I'm going to get started in a minute or so. You guys can keep eating. I just want to make sure we have enough time for some Q&A after. You don't all have to stop talking. So, I'm Monty from the WasteLAB. This is my trash talk. I like to say that. I'm never going to be on the TED Talk stage probably, so this is my TED Talk. So I'm going to run through. They say I have 20 minutes. I can give this talk in about 6 hours, I think. So I'll try to get through it all in 20 minutes ish. But yeah, if you have any questions, we're going to have a little bit of time for some Q&A afterwards. So yeah, make sure you have any questions if you have any questions. So a little bit hard to read, but so David Kohler, who's the new president and CEO of the company, back in 2008, he had this idea, probably thought about it for a while before this, but this is a quote from him: "Business success doesn't matter much if we can't say we left the world a better place than we found it." This was kind of novel and a shock to the company at the time. And he also added to this, he wants the company to be net zero and zero waste to landfill. And for a company the size of Kohler, for the CEO to say that was, I'm imagining him dropping a mic and walking out of the room. I don't know if that's what happened. I wasn't there, but that was a big statement for David at the time. It took us probably 4 more years. It took us to about 2014, math, 6 more years, until we kind of really started thinking about what that really meant. There was a group of about 6 of us that really kind of grabbed onto that idea to understand, okay, if we're going to be serious about this, what does that take? What do we really need to do to make that happen? So we went around our camp. So this is Kohler, Wisconsin. Kohler is an actual village. There's about 2,500 people that live there. It's this beautiful little planned village. Same people who planned Central Park in New York. They planned Kohler, Wisconsin. So all the trees are perfect and everything. So we walked around campus. This was all the manufacturing sites. So we have pottery, the ceramics, where we make toilets and sinks. We have our foundry, which is cast iron. We have our enamel facility, where we do all of our cast iron enameling. And then we have brass. We had engines at the time. So it's a huge facility. So we walked around all the plants on this facility, and any hopper that said waste to landfill, anything like that, we analyzed it. We grabbed it. We looked at what they were. So we analyzed it, sent it to our chem labs, make sure it wasn't hazardous waste. We didn't want to be, catching anything or whatever. And then we really wanted to understand where they went after they were put in these hoppers. So we have this giant landfill behind our manufacturing site. It was, at one point, somebody said it was going to be a ski hill. I'm not sure if that was true. Makes a good story, though. And in the 70s, it started to get filled. They started to fill it up. And somebody at that point had the idea of, well, this is not a good thing. So they started to create this beneficial reuse area. And on the far side of that slide, that's what you see there. So somebody had the foresight to think, okay, we can start doing something with some of these materials. So these are crushed up sinks, toilets. Those are sand from the molds and things. And the state started using these for road beds and for landfill for construction and things. So we were giving some of that material back for use. Not the best thing for some of these materials. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, but like the toilets and sinks, are they made of porcelain and metals, or is it pretty much porcelain, or what are they made of?
Yeah, so our So we have a few different. So the toilets are all ceramic, vitreous ceramic. It's not a porcelain. It's kind of like an earthenware-ish. Toilets are really weird. So it's kind of a ceramic. And then we have sinks made out of that material as well. We also have cast iron sinks and bathtubs and all that. So there's a lot. But toilets are all made out of ceramic. So these are mainly vitreous. So these are fired. So they've gone through the kiln process. They've had their glaze put on them. And then they've gone through testing, or they've broken their return products or whatever. So they get crushed up and they're used in roadbeds and landfill, that kind of thing. So that was great. That reduced our material to landfill. So that was a good start. But you can see how these other piles, those are, some of the sinks and toilets that are glazed, they get glaze on them, they don't get fired. Somebody drops them, there's a crack. Those can't be recycled because they have glaze on them now. Those get put in landfill. That's a perfectly good source of clay. If I was when I was a ceramic artist, if I had that material, that would have been a lifetime supply of perfectly good clay. That was going to landfill. So that was one of the very first things that we looked at as a group. So we formed this little group, and then we kind of came up with this mission statement. We want to make saleable products out of our waste. And the next part was really important. We wanted to make sure that any of the products in the future, when they were designed by our designers, we also wanted them to think about, okay, when I design a product, I also want to be thinking about the waste that product is producing and have an idea for that. So that was kind of us saying, okay, that's job security. When somebody designs a sink or a toilet, they also have to think about, okay, what are we going to design with the waste? That was our thinking at the time. But the main thing was we want to make some saleable items with anything going to landfill. So I mentioned this before. So cross out the word waste, changes your mentality. This is now these are now your virgin raw materials. Changes your whole mindset of what's your kitchen. What's in your kitchen now? If these are your 6 materials that you can make a cake out of, whatever your analogy is, it limits what you can make, but it also opens up a whole bunch of other possibilities. Yep.
Can I ask, what do you use with the cast iron slag? What can you do?
You can do lots of stuff with it. I'll show you. I'll show you in a second. So when we first started, the dry pottery cull, so that's like the cleanest source of materials. Those are our sinks and toilets that have a little bit of glaze on them. You can crush that material right up. You can add liquid to it. You can make it back into slip. Beautiful. So that, when we first started, that was 100% of our tile. At the beginning, we didn't know what we were making, so it wasn't tile at that time, but we knew we could make something with it because it's a perfectly good source. Cast iron slag, that's essentially a glass iron-bound material. So you can mix that in with glaze, you can mix that in with the clay, you can make terracotta out of it when it's mixed with pottery. If you go over and look at our samples, which are over there, you should take a look at them later. The amber glaze in there, that's mixed with some of our amber glaze, or some of our cast iron enamel waste, and that's how we get our amber glaze. So it's a really strong colorant. It's actually a pretty fascinating material because it's iron bound in a glass material, essentially. Waste glaze is waste glaze. So we have a good source of melting binding material, right? And then wastewater sludge. So if the dry pottery cull is the cleanest source of material that we have, the wastewater filter cake sludge is like the bottom of the bucket. But it's also a really nice source of clay. So we use that now. We're trying to understand how we can make tile out of that, other clay bodies, that kind of thing. So that's also a good source of clay. Whenever you manufacture anything, you have waste. You make an omelet, you have waste. Anything you make creates waste. It's inevitable. So when you clean out a bucket of glaze, you clean out a booth in the factory, you rinse out anything, all that goes down the drain. It settles into this big swimming pool holding tank thing in the basement. And then we dredge all that material out and we run it through a giant coffee filter-ish thing. And we get these big cakes of slop-ish stuff. And that's what we call filter cake. And that makes a great source of material that we're trying to understand what we can do with. We can make tile out of it. It's a little bit funky in that it reacts a little bit different than our pure clean material, but it's a great source of material, and there's a lot of it. Vitreous coal, that's our fired sinks and toilets, so that's already been vitrified. That is a great source of fill for a lot of things. I can put that in a tile material. I can put that in other materials. I'll show you in a minute our sinks that we have come up with. That's a major source of fill for those materials. There's a sink over here I'll like to show you in a bit, and it's got vitreous coal in it. And then foundry sand and dust, that is a great colorant, so it's a source of black powder essentially. In our foundry, they make a bathtub or a kitchen sink every 30 seconds in our cast iron facility, which is mind-boggling to me, but they produce about 4 tons of dust a day in that facility. And we collect that and we can use it as a colorant. So that's a great source of material for us. So this is where we started as a waste lab. That picture in that top corner, that's what we started making when we started the waste lab. Just these little blobs of material. They were pottery coal mixed with dust, mixed with sludge, mixed with anything. That's enamel powder on this top as our glaze. We had no idea what we were doing. This was not an official project. We did it on our own at lunch after hours. We stole everything to make the stuff, borrowed it, stole it really, but we'd say we borrowed it. And we just were playing. We were just trying to understand it. This is 2014, 2015. And then we started making these kind of things with these patterns, right? So we were trying to understand what these waste materials could be. It was all playing. So I'm a ceramic artist. 2 of the other people on that group were artists. So we really liked the idea of playing with materials, forming anything. We weren't making anything. We were just trying to understand what it could be, right? So then people came by and they really liked what we were doing. They really liked these objects we were making. Some of the finishes were really interesting. And they said, you guys really need to turn this into a project. You guys need to get some funding and make this into something. So we met with some business people. We figured out, yep.
And you are not compromising durability?
No, so I can get into this. So when we did end up making tile, we ran through the gamut of tests. We don't put anything on the market that doesn't meet current standards. So yeah. At this point, no, none of this would probably have met any standard. No way. But they're cool, I'll tell you that. So this brought a lot of attention. So we got a lot of attention. We worked with some people to figure out a business plan so that we could get funding. We found out very quickly that you can't get funding unless you have a business plan. It's important. So they said, why don't you guys work with the people from Ann Sachs? Lovely people from Ann Sachs. So we met with a designer from Ann Sachs, and she looked at our samples. We had a bunch of them. There's a few here. And she picked out some of her favorites, some of the glazes that she really liked. And she asked us to refine some of them, develop those a little bit further. This was late 2015, early 2016. And it took us 3 more years to really understand how those would be a viable, saleable product that could go on the market that people would actually want to buy. Okay, don't get me wrong, I would buy this stuff all day, but I'm a little biased. My mom would probably buy this stuff, but she's definitely biased. So for us to make this into an actual product, it took us another 3 years. But then we launched the Crackle collection. We launched this at Cavis in 2019. This is our amber color. We originally came out with 6 colors, 6 shapes, and it was a huge hit. It was great. We won a bunch of awards for sustainability. These are 99.8% waste from our landfill, made by, I think there was 8 of us at the time, using every ounce of every resource that we had at the time. So we had no idea what we were doing. There was just a little group of us trying to make as much as we could. So at this point, we were an official department. I was hired as the first official employee in 2018. And then there were a couple of us followed after. I think there was 4 official employees at this point. And then we had a lot of outside volunteer help. And then we need to figure out how to fill orders and all this kind of stuff. And there was a little pandemic thing that happened. Maybe some of you remember that. But they wanted more. People wanted more. What else do you got? So then it took us 3 more years. So in 22, we launched the Abster collection. So one of the issues with the Crackle collection was that we didn't recommend this for wet spaces, and that was apparently something that people wanted. So we introduced the Abster collection that is wet space compatible. And we really like the idea of having people be kind of part of the design process. So we made this sort of abstract pattern. People could kind of play with the installation themselves. It comes in this feature pattern, and there's also a field kind of pattern. This has 8 colors. There's some samples over here you can look at later. And this was kind of really our really first like big introduction of tile as a WasteLAB for me, I guess, because the Crackle was great. It kind of really got us on the scene, but this was like our first sort of personalized collection that had a kind of won a bunch more awards, which was great. But with that comes demand, right? Which is also great, but as a small department, and that's maybe not the best thing. It is great, but struggle. So at this point, we need to figure out how to do production. We're in this small facility. We had a few kilns that kind of worked. I know, like, people ask us, well, you guys are Kohler. You're this massive company. Why are you guys struggling with this? It's like, well, we're a small department. We're just a few people. We're not on this massive casting floor where they make the toilets. We're a totally different department. So that was the difference. People didn't quite understand that at the time. We're the Kohler WasteLAB. We're not the Kohler pottery or whatever. So they put out this hunt for a new director of the business, and we got Matt, who's our business director. So he came on, helped us organize as a department, helped us get our lead times down, expand as a department, and get us kind of flying as a department. After this, we got some attention. This was our first artist collaboration. Nada Debs actually met with Laura Kohler in late 22 in design in Milan, to the Design Week in Milan. And they got talking about what the WasteLAB was, and Nada Debs really loved the concept of what we were doing. It fits perfectly with her idea, with who she is as an artist and designer, and she wanted to work with us. So I met with her over the phone. She was in Beirut at the time. I'm in Kohler, Wisconsin, obviously. So we met over the phone, over the computer webs, obviously, and we designed these tiles as an installation for Design Miami in 23, I think. Anyway, math, years. So we designed these 3 spaces to be it's actually in this lookbook. So there's a lookbook around, you'll be able to see it. And it was just for an exhibition. It was just these 3 pieces to be an installation for a show, and that was it. It was in Design Miami, and it was a huge success. People loved it. It was the most Instagrammable space in Design Miami, which is not a small feat. So people were coming up and saying, when can we buy this stuff? I want to put this in our home. And we were like, we don't have this for sale. It's just for this. So when we get back to Kohler, and we had to figure out how to put this into production because it was so valued. So that was our next launch. That was our next product on the market. Again, very well received. There's some samples of it over here in 2 colors. It's on the market now. And that was kind of the start of a collaboration. We love this idea of working with other artists. They see things a little different than we do, and that's great, bringing outside people in. And then we had a partnership with Daniel Arsham. Kohler did a suite with him, and he really liked the concept of making tile with us. So we have some samples over here. So he did this other suite, and he was doing the tour of the factory. We met with him in the WasteLAB. He liked the idea of what we were doing and wanted to figure out how he could make some tile with us. So he met with us. We discussed kind of some possibilities, and he ended up doing these torn paper patterns that kind of mimic the way water crashes on a beach kind of thing. And that you'll see that in the pattern of the tile. So it's really about the way that we can get different feelings, different things into our tile, and it's all still 98% or more landfill-bound waste. So that was our goal. We've always been able to stick with that in our tile. Our glaze is all, the majority of it is all waste from our glaze, from our pottery, our enamel, and then we do, like I said, we do add a little bit of pigment for stability. Glaze is a funny thing, so we need a little bit of that stuff for stability, but that's one of our compromises that we talked about earlier. So this brings us back actually to 2017. So when we first launched the WasteLAB, remember we were this tiny little group. David, we had an open house of our new space. And our new space was like the corner of a building that we stole and put a few machines in, equipment. And we had a new kiln that was like this big. And David wanted to see what we were doing with his money. So he's like, I want to come see what you guys are doing. So we had an open house. I think we had like 4 bottles of water and a cookie or something. I don't know. It wasn't that impressive. But he was like, hey, do you guys have a sink? It'd be cool if you guys could make a sink. We don't have a sink. This was on a Thursday and the open house was on a Tuesday. So we panicked. So over the weekend, we made a couple of sinks in this mold with some goop and some stuff we threw into this mold. And it turned out not too bad. So he saw that on Tuesday and immediately he was like, can you put that in the showroom right now? We want to sell it. And we were like, I don't think that's how it works. So it was thrown around for a while and then that got kind of put on the shelf. Because we, again, had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know how to market, put things into the process. So finally, last year, so while it was 2 years ago, we got to meeting with some of the other departments in Kohler, and we got to work with some of those groups, and they were able to meet with us and figure out, okay, how can we launch one of these sinks, one of these products? So we designed the material. So we developed the aesthetic of the material to give it that aggregate look of a natural stone or a natural granite kind of a feeling. And then we took an existing shape that Kohler sells, which cut the design process by half, at least. The Kohler design process can take a long, long time. So that was huge for us. We showed it to David and he said, yeah, great idea, go. So great win. I think the meeting was like 5 minutes it took. So he was like, yep, looks good. Great idea. So this was one of the fastest projects I've ever worked on. I've been at Kohler as a designer. I was there for about 15 years. And this by far was one of the easiest design projects. And the material was great. We were able to put these out. And then it was the testing and everything. Because like I said, we want our products to meet standards. So these, we had to tweak the recipe and everything so that it does meet standards for bathrooms. So this is our Ashen. We launched it last year. It's a tabletop basin for the bathroom. So this is our dark color. Everybody was asking us, when are you guys going to do a lighter color? Because everybody wants a white. And that was another challenge. We had to develop a new process for the white because there was all these other issues with white. Issues, whatever. I don't want to get into all the details. But this year, we're launching that one over there. And you guys are the first people as a group to see it. I'm excited. We were excited to bring it. And you guys can't take photos of it. Well, okay, you can take photos of it, but you can't put it on Instagram or Facebook or anything until after Tuesday? Monday. So it's launching on Monday. But yeah, this is yeah.
Will you be making tubs?
So tubs have been brought up a lot. People want bathtubs. I would love to. I mean, so this material. So I'm going to back up a bit. Oh, wait, wrong way. So this material, so tile was where we started, right? And that was kind of the future. That was what WasteLAB was going to be. We were going to do tile. As a materials person, as an artist, as a designer, tile's kind of boring to me because there's so many other things that you can do as a materials person. So when we started in this 3D movement, or whatever you want to call it, that was super exciting to me. So there's all these other possibilities now because we're able to form in 3 dimensions. So I would love to do a tub. People have been asking for a tub. I don't necessarily think this is the material that we would do a tub out of, but I mentioned this before, I'm working on another material that I can't tell you about, but I think it would be a better material for a bathtub. I can't tell you about it. Anyway, so maybe next year, I don't know. But this was like a game changer for me because it brought up so many other possibilities. This uses 36 pounds of waste. It's about 74% waste material. This uses vitreous cull, foundry sand, and foundry dust as the colorant. And these were super well received. I think we got an award for this one as well. And we were actually asked for a project based on this material. Somebody asked us if we could do some planters. This was just an internal project. Somebody said, hey, can you guys do some planters? We're like, well, I mean, we can look at it. We can think about it. I got a lot of pushback because there were some issues with making planters. I was persistent in saying, I think we can do this. If we get them to pay for the development, if we get them to pay for the molds and all this kind of stuff, do you think maybe we could do it? Eventually, the person who was pushing back on me said yes. This was Matt. And we ended up making 19 of them original in the finished product. And they were like 40 inches tall. So these weren't small planters. I wish I had a picture of them. But, they just came out. We just finished them. And they were so well received. There's like about 300 pounds of waste in them. They use a cast iron base that is a waste product from our foundry. So we do 3 different kinds of cast iron in our process. When you switch from one metal to another, you have to flush out the system, and it's a big system. So they pour these scrap plates, and we use those scrap plates as the stands. So it's really cool. And we were able to make those as our planter bases. And they were so well received, we put them in a design center. Customers were coming in and saying, can we buy these? Nope. But you can now. Sort of. But they're massive. So we're like, well, you can't really just put it in your car. But people were going to, so that was the issue. So like, well, let's actually make it another product. Let's make it a product. Like the hammam thing, right? So that was exciting to us. And that again opened, oh, there they are. Thank you, well done. So there they are, those are our planters. So these are, I was going to drop a bomb there. Those are cool to me because of what they represent. So that could be a bathtub. It could be. They're massive. And what the possibilities of this material is that could be anything outside now, right? You could do benches, you could do tabletops, you could do a whole range of things. So to me, that is a game changer material for the WasteLAB. Think of all the material we're keeping out of the landfill now. That 19 times 300, math, lots, right? So for me, that was a huge light bulb. So I wish I could tell you about this new material. Anyway, so the new material I'm working on is similar to this in that it will allow us to make large items in a wide variety of products that would use a massive amount of waste material. And not just, not just like tile or planters, but outdoor pavers, many things. I'm about to tell you about it, but I can't. So anyway, I want to show you a short video on the process that we do for this. And it's a great video in a few different ways because it shows you kind of how scrappy the WasteLAB is. We don't use a lot of really fancy equipment because of how small we are. And this is really kind of how we started.
Every end is also a beginning. The only question is, of what? At Kohler Company, our dedication to sustainability and entrepreneurship led us to create our internal innovation incubator, Innovation for Good. From that emerged the Kohler WasteLAB, a small-scale studio where we challenge ourselves to see beauty and artistic possibility, where others only see remnant and byproduct. Working in small batches, pairing expert craftsmanship with bold innovation, we take what can no longer be used in our manufacturing operations. Slag, scraped from molten iron. Excess glaze, collected from the spray booth. Pottery wastewater, processed into filter cake. Material that others would send to the landfill. And step by step, we break it down and reshape it into something new, into products of elegance and sophistication, driven by our passion for sustainability and the belief in a better future. We write a new beginning, one of beauty, artistic creativity, and limitless possibilities. We write the beginning. The rest is up to you.
So I'm just going to finish. So this is my last slide-ish. So this is kind of interesting to me because there's nobody else that's doing this. And the reason I know this is because I get emails all the time from companies that are asking us, how do you guys do this? We've had a few companies come and visit us. So the first thing that companies ask us is, can you take our waste? Can you guys take our garbage? And then I tell them how big we are or how small we are. And then they understand, okay, well, it doesn't make sense. And then they want to know, well, how did you guys do this? How did you guys start doing this? Because we can't do this. And so I walk them through the process. It's not a fast process. Yeah.
I want you to finish your sentence.
Oh, okay. So it took us 10 years to get where we are now. It took us 5 or 6 years before we launched our first product. So it's not a fast process. So I try to explain that to people. You have to start. We started with these little blobs of goo. Like they were nothing. They were just little ideas. And trying to explain that to people, that it's not something that we walked up to Mr. Kohler or David and just said, hey, I want $1 million to make this stuff out of garbage. So that's what we tried, and it doesn't work. But we had a CEO, we had a CFO, we had Laura Kohler. She's our sustainability officer, and so when the head of your company believes so strongly in sustainability, that is a huge difference. So that's what I'm hearing from these other companies, is that they can't get past that level sometimes, and that's a big thing. Yeah.
So my question is where the waste is coming from. Like, is this your waste from the production?
Yeah.
Or is this your waste from the old products coming back?
Maybe a little of both. Most of it is from our production. So here's my last slide. This might show you. So all the waste streams that we're using are from our manufacturing processes. So that's a guy who works in our sub-basement who's responsible for moving sand and dust from our casting processes and cast iron. His name's probably Bob, and I'm not kidding. They're all named Bob or Steve, I think. But when you explain to this guy, like, what you're doing with it, so this was a struggle at the beginning because we would collect these hoppers of waste, whether it was pottery. Am I over 20 minutes? Does this matter? Are you guys okay? I don't know. Okay. When we would first collect these hoppers, we would get because it was all going to landfill, we'd get cigarette butts, Band-Aids, earplugs, gloves, everything in there. And that was an issue because now we have to sift through all this waste, other waste, right, in our raw material. And it was an issue. So we'd have to go over to Bob and be like, hey, don't spit your gum in our material because it's gross and I don't want to sift through it all. And then we would show them like, hey, these are the tiles that we're trying to make, and explain to them the process. And then you would see these kind of lights go off in their heads of like, that's really cool. Like, your guys are using our waste to make this stuff. And then they would be proud of being a part of that. And it wasn't overnight, but you would see like our materials improved drastically. And I could say we probably don't have a lot of that stuff anymore because they understand that this is a raw material that we need them to take a little bit of pride in. And it did change. Like, these guys are now proud of the fact that they can help us make these products. So that was really cool for us. And it takes like a little bit of outreach, of course. You got to go around and convince the guys that, hey, this is worthwhile. don't put your cigarettes butts in here and that kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, it starts as manufacturing waste from all of our manufacturing process. Almost all of it comes from Kohler. So the white sink is the first product that we use scrap from another plant. So that some of the scrap comes from our Vicryl, which is a fiberglass reinforced tubs from Huntsville, Alabama. Right now we're making them in Kohler, Wisconsin. There was an issue. We were thinking, well, we're going to be shipping material. That's not the most sustainable thing. But the amount of material that we need for like a year's supply of those sinks comes up, on maybe half of a truck once. So we kind of dealt with that, and we may be looking to move that process down to Huntsville or somewhere else so that we wouldn't have to manufacture and move a bunch of material around. So we're looking at that as well. So the end goal would be that, the Kohler Wisconsin WasteLAB would be the center of excellence. Every Kohler manufacturing center around the world, there's 52 of them, I think, would have somebody there working as part of the WasteLAB to develop and manufacture products from their waste streams. So nobody at any Kohler manufacturing facility would be throwing anything in the garbage. That's the dream. One of the guys I started this WasteLAB with, said his dream was to be in 10 years or 15 years that there would be no need for the WasteLAB. He's retired. I would still like to have a job, so I hope that's not true. But I would love to be able to expand like that. That's my dream. I love what I do. I love this job. I love to be able to say that I can take that pile of garbage, waste, and turn it into that stuff. And people don't see that and see that. It's this like weird thing in their brains where they're like, there's no way that's garbage. And you're like, yeah, that's what we make. So thank you for listening to my trash talk.